thought I'd read some thoughts from the cabin book today. Other than my music and a lot of the text I've written, I guess this book is the closest thing to a diary I've held over a period of several years. And I'd like to talk about my experience with PTSD and some of the trauma that I've experienced through life. On December 5th, 2016, I describe a kind of typical PTSD reaction or episode, which is something that many people won't see. It's kind of an invisible illness. And it is also an illness which greatly affects the lives of those who deal with it. So this was written in Spanish. I will translate it as we go along. December 5th, 2016. As I was preparing to leave the house today, Z arrived to get Z's bag. But as I was occupied with the preparation, entering and exiting the old main door and the door of the cellar, I became greatly afraid as I entered again the house and heard another person there. I left running out of the front door, afraid greatly, and I saw a car that was still running, and I couldn't even think who it might be. I just realized and understood how much fear I had. Fear of being killed. That's why I left running so quickly, in order to escape if it was a threat, and also to be able to see from a distance who it might be that had entered the house. And it was just Z. But how my blood was full of adrenaline. And Z left, and I came driving up here in the tractor. In my life, I've experienced some trauma and have been in a number of threatening and traumatic situations. Some in my youth, some just randomly as I was in my 30s, I believe, in the beginning of my 30s, and also the past few years, specifically 2015, 2016 with the refugee crisis. As regards one of the episodes in my youth, somebody which I had a close relationship with performed an act, a willful act that would cause me great harm or kill me. That person has asked for forgiveness, and I continue to try and forgive that person every day of my life. But such an episode has left an impact on me, and it has affected how I view the world, how I relate to the world. I was witness to a murder in 2009, a bloody murder, or a knife fight in another country, where I also stood in the line of fire, so to speak, or within reach of the knife man as he came towards me, and I backed off as I was going to help, realizing what the situation was. And I remember coming back to Norway, and immediately I went to my doctor and said, I need to see a psychologist. Now, I've been seeing psychologists and going to therapy for many years, and this has been one of the themes through a lot of that therapy. Um, both because I had a lot of anger issues. As many know, I was violent towards my ex-wife, and gone to therapy and worked through a lot of that stuff. And when I talk of PTSD, of my own trauma, I want to make it very clear that dealing with that, or having the experiences or the experience of life with that, does not excuse in any way my previous violence and my anger. But it affects me. During the refugee crisis, I was witness to extreme conditions where people died, where I carried on several occasions dead bodies off of boats. Some people we tried to save through CPR and other measures with a team of doctors and medics. I was responsible for that. Refugee camp for a time, and had to arrange for funerals and arrange for interviews with people whose family members had died, and perform some of those interviews and go to funerals with people, and these things affect you, and these experiences throughout life have formed who I have become and who I am. It's made me strong and at the same time vulnerable. In one way, I could say that you have the anxiety of, you hear something unknown, like in the house, when suddenly I didn't know who was there. And especially in 2015 and 16, I received a number of threats from people for my work with refugees. It's not something I made a big deal of. I've actually tried to make friends with these people. I want to talk to people who completely disagree with me, but I've had that as a part of my life experience, and every once in a while I may be sitting completely still and nobody can see it, but I am on a high alert, and I'm a very intense person, and some of you may have realized that by now. In many ways, dealing with it has made me unafraid, because I really, of course we want people to like us and pat us on the back, but in many ways I really don't give a shit what people think about me. I do want to be nice, but and I think that is because I've learned to kind of to mostly trust myself, and because I've experienced some really bad things from humanity, I really have a hard time trusting anyone. I've seen people turn their backs just as quickly as they can, support you behind the scenes, and never are willing to show their face, and that's kind of like a disappointment. But I choose to trust. I choose to be with people, but I do have this underlying kind of skepticism to really trusting people when it comes down to it. But I want to trust, and I try to trust, but it affects how I relate to people because of some of my experiences, and I would say definite betrayals, and the betrayal of a more adult person as relates to a child in the experiences of my youth. And I continue to try and forgive, and I continue to try and deal with some of these things, because an episode like described there, it can happen on the city street. I might be walking down Main Street or Machkins here, and there's just something that ain't right, and you won't see much change in me, but I'm fucking stressed out, man. And that too is a part of who I am.